When gospel or crossover artists went into the studio, sometimes they went in with some bank to produce thousands or millions of vinyl. Today, we will look at some of the most common vinyls that you might find in a vinyl store, flea market, thrift store, estate sale, or yard sale. How many copies of these vinyls did they press? If you look for old vinyl records, you're probably used to seeing some familiar covers. In the gospel world, some copies were widely produced for various reasons. There are basically two reasons why multiples exist. First, the artist or studio invested in abundance of copies, or secondly, the public buys them, making it possible for them to keep pressing them. So keep in mind that the multiple copies may vary in each area. In other words, you might find lots of vinyls in one area that turn up dry in another area. First, let's look at the Chuckwagon Gang. According to their website, chuckwagongang.com, when farmer D.P. Dad Carter formed the group in 1935 with son Ernest and daughters Lola and Effie, he couldn't have conceived of the PBS documentaries or the fan letters from presidents. Dad was just simply looking for a way to spread the good word and a way to buy medicine for Effie, who was sick with pneumonia. The group found work on a small Lubbock, Texas radio station, and word soon spread about the group's harmonies. On November 25th and 26th of 1936, the Chuckwagon Gang recorded for American Record Corporation, run by now famed producers Don Law and Art Sathery. In short time, the gang's contract and master recordings were produced by Columbia Records, a company which they ultimately recorded 408 masters, which is probably why you see so many copies of the Chuckwagon Gang, because of Columbia. So the studio has a lot to do with the exposure, and since Columbia Records picked up the Chuckwagon Gang, they produced a massive amount of vinyl. According to Wikipedia, at one point, they were Columbia's #1 group with over 39 million in record sales. Next we have Tennessee Ernie Ford. Ford is known as a crossover artist, one who crosses from gospel to non-gospel or back again. Wikipedia says that Ford was born in Bristol, Tennessee to Maud and Clarence Thomas Ford, and he spent much of his time in the early years listening to country or western musicians in person or on the radio. Ford began wandering around Bristow in his high school years, taking interest in the radio, and began a radio career as an announcer at WOPIAM in 1937 and being paid $10 a week. In 1938, the young bass baritone left the station and went to study classical music at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music in Ohio, where he returned after announcing a big job that he had in 1939 and did it from 39 to 41 in stations from Atlanta to Knoxville. A first lieutenant, Ford served in the United States Army Air Corps in World War II as a bombardier on a B-29 Superfortress, but the war ended before he was sent to Japan. He was also a bombing instructor at George Air Force Base in Victorville, California. Ford became famous for his country songs like 16 Tons. However, he crossed back over to his gospel roots and began releasing many hymn-based vinyls. The word hymn, by the way, basically means sing praises. So, Ford probably had a lot of financial backing to finance his own vinyls, which is why you see a ton of these everywhere you go. The next one on our list is the Bill Gaither Trio, or anything with Bill Gaither on it. Bill is a major gospel music leader, songwriter, and producer. Wikipedia says that Bill Gaither began producing vinyl in 1956. On the website, gaither.com, it says the collaborations of Bill and Gloria, his wife, have resulted in more than 700 popular gospel songs, including the hymnal standard Because He Lives, The King Is Coming, Something Beautiful, He Touched Me, It Is Finished, There's Something About That Name, and Let's Just Praise the Lord. If you know anything about gospel music, you know at least one of these songs. So Gaither Vinyl is a wonderful example of a unique and talented ability to share songs with the church that just hit right. And getting into what makes a gospel song appealing or popular is for another video. But let me tell you, it's more than just having the right musical hooks or the right industry connections. You will find lots of Gaither vinyl because the gospel community connected with his music, because it lined up with the Bible and it encouraged people to sing together. Our next common vinyl is still connected to Bill Gaither, but it's actually featuring a man named Ron Huff. His album Alleluia, a praise gathering for believers, includes songs written by Bill and Gloria Gaither, but Ron Huff arranged the choral and orchestral music for it. According to Gaither.com's Hall of Honor, Ron Huff is a treasure to the world of gospel music in many ways. His faithful behind-the-scenes role as an arranger has made many artists and songwriters shine, putting songs in musical settings that took them from good to great and from great to greater. Huff began his career as a church choir director, serving as the minister of music in Denver, Colorado. There, he arranged 2 books of hymns, Celebration, Music for Festival Choir, and Celebration 2, which both became very successful. In 1973, he arranged and directed a collection of Bill and Gloria Gaither's songs into a new, renowned musical known as Alleluia, a praise gathering. That musical became the first Christian recording ever to receive an RIAA Gold certification, with more than 1 million records and books sold, which is probably why you find this in a lot of stores. According to Gaither, a lot of people would have never even heard of his music if it had not been for Ron Huff's involvement. There are over 400 of these vinyls listed on Discogs.com. This vinyl was released by a U.S. record company owned by John T. Benson called the Benson Company Incorporated in the 1980s. Also, it appears as the Benson Co. Benson also owned and distributed vinyls for Heartwarming Records, Impact, and Green Tree Records. I could do a whole series of videos on just Benson vinyl. There are probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of records out there from Benson. I have 2 more vinyls I want to feature for common copies that you'll find almost anywhere you look for old records. The next one is by Richard Roberts. The title is My Father's Favorite Songs. His father was Oral Roberts, a gospel minister and faith healer and founder of Oral Roberts University. Now, I'm surprised that Discog only has a little over 100 of these listed. I see them all the time. I found one of them in a thrift store recently when I was on a trip to Orlando, Florida. Apparently, Oral Roberts had the ability to mass produce these kind of vinyls. Light Records recorded the album that you see here, and according to Discogs, Light Records is a gospel record label started as a division of Lexicon Music Incorporated in Waco, Texas. It was founded in 1966 by Ralph Carmichael as a joint venture with the Waco, Texas-based Word label. No doubt when it comes to Richard Roberts music, you've probably seen this in a store, or an album like this, or an album like this. Apparently they had the ability to produce hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of these vinyls. If you are looking in nearly any vintage or thrift store, chances are you will come across a vinyl from Jimmy Swaggart. This ministry is still widely known today, but Reverend Jimmy Swaggart was very well known in the Christian community throughout the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. His anointed, electrifying, and soulful piano style became a status for Pentecostal music. According to the website jsm.org, the Reverend Jimmy Swaggart has preached the gospel of Jesus Christ on television longer than any other American evangelist in history. From the time Mr. Swaggart launched into full-time ministry, 1955 until now, where he preaches to a worldwide audience through his Sun Life Broadcasting Network, the number of people who have heard him minister live and on television is incalculable. Reverend Jimmy Swaggart's first album was Some Golden Daybreak. It was released in 1958 and it became an immediate favorite. Since then, he has sold more than 17 million recordings. which is probably why you find them often in stores. In the 1970s, Jimmy owned his own record label, Jim Records. He also recorded for artists like John Starnes, Fred Johnson, and Janet Paschal. This particular album, Looking for a City, is one of my personal favorites, and when I first bought it as a teenager, I remember practicing track 1, the piano riff in Looking for a City, many times until I would try to get somewhat close to what Brother Swaggart can pull off. Still trying to get there. What are common vinyls that you see? Do you get duplicates for your collection? So thank you for watching, and until next time, keep putting the stylus down and turn it around. For Lost and Found Gospel Vinyl, I'm Kevin Vogele, and I hope to see you soon.